Something was wrong with that mug. I couldn't prove it. I had no lab test, no evidence, nothing solid in my hands. Just a smell, metallic, sharp, something underneath the coffee that had no business being there, and a gut feeling so loud it was almost a sound. My brother had just said it in front of my 9-year-old son with a smile I had never seen on his face before. Brendan Hollister, who has never made coffee for another human being in his entire 42 years of life. Not for his wife. Not for himself. The man drinks cold brew from Whole Foods bottles. He doesn't do coffee. He doesn't do anything that requires effort for someone else. But here he was. Special blend. For my kid. And Naomi, his wife, had just looked up from her phone and smiled. Not at Theo. Just smiled. Small. Satisfied. Like something was going exactly according to plan. Theo was already reaching for the mug. I had maybe 20 seconds. So I did something. Something small, something that looked completely accidental, something nobody at that table noticed in the moment. But that one quiet, unremarkable little move is the reason my son is alive today. That's the story. That's what this is. And before you ask, yes, I knew. I knew the second Brendan walked over to Theo with that mug. I knew because Brendan Hollister has never made coffee for another person in his life. Not once. Not for his wife, not for his kids, not even for himself. The man drinks cold brew from Whole Foods in little recyclable bottles that he leaves all over the house like breadcrumbs to nowhere. He doesn't do coffee. He doesn't do anything that requires effort for someone else. So when he walked out of that kitchen, smiling, holding a steaming mug toward my son, my 9-year-old son who was just sitting there swinging his legs under the table and humming something off-key, every single alarm in my body went off at once. I just didn't let it show on my face. That's the part people don't believe when I tell this story. They expect me to say I screamed, or I grabbed the mug, or I flipped the table and dragged Theo out the door. But that's not what happened. What happened was quieter than that. Smarter than that. And honestly, more satisfying than anything dramatic could have ever been. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how we got to that table. Sunday brunch at Brendan and Naomi's house was always a performance. Everything in their house was a performance. The mahogany dining table that seated 12 when there were only 6 of us eating. The centerpiece that looked like it had been styled by a magazine. The bacon that was always overcooked and the eggs that were always underdone because Naomi cared more about how the table looked than what was actually on it. Naomi Hollister. Brendan's wife of 6 years. She sat across from me that morning with her spine straight as a judge's gavel and her eyes already scanning, already calculating, already deciding what she was going to say and when. She had that look she always had, like she'd spent the morning sharpening her tongue and was just waiting for the right moment to use it. My son Theo sat next to me. 9 years old. Dinosaur t-shirt with a fraying collar that I refused to throw away because it made him happy. Naomi had already glanced at that shirt twice before the food even hit the table. I knew what that glance meant. I'd been on the receiving end of Naomi's opinions about Theo's clothes, Theo's diet, Theo's school, Theo's social skills, Theo's everything for 6 years. I was used to it. What I was not used to was Brendan bringing my child a special drink. He came out of the kitchen carrying the mug with both hands, like it was something precious. His face was doing this thing, this careful, casual thing, like he was trying very hard to look like he wasn't trying at all. Made you a special coffee, buddy. Theo looked up, confused, but curious the way kids are when adults do something unexpected. Really? I can have coffee? Just a little, Brendan said, ruffling his hair. You're a big guy now, right? And Naomi smiled. Not at Theo. At her phone. This small, satisfied smile, like something was going according to plan. I leaned forward slightly. Not dramatically. Just enough to catch the steam coming off that mug. Metallic. Sharp. Something underneath the coffee smell that didn't belong there. Wrong in a way I couldn't name exactly but couldn't ignore either. My pulse jumped. My face didn't. Years of sitting across from Naomi had taught me that the best weapon you have against a person like her is looking completely unbothered. So I kept my expression light, reached across the table like I was going for the cream, and my elbow caught the edge of the mug. A small bump. An accident. The kind of thing that happens at breakfast tables all the time. The mug switched. I'm not going to pretend that was effortless. I'm not going to pretend my hands weren't shaking underneath that cardigan. But I had one job in that moment, make sure Theo did not drink whatever was in that cup. Everything else could come after. Brendan didn't notice. He was already heading back to the kitchen, whistling to himself, his back to the table. Naomi didn't notice either. She was scrolling her phone, one hand reaching automatically for the mug in front of her, the mug that was now hers, the one with the floral pattern and her own lipstick on the rim. She sipped. Theo reached for the mug that was now in front of him. I reached over gently and took it from his hands. Actually, sweetheart, let's wait until after breakfast. Coffee on an empty stomach isn't great. He shrugged. Okay. And went back to his bacon. Naomi looked up. Oh, let the boy try it, Meredith. You baby him too much. I smiled. You're probably right. She sipped again. 30 minutes later, her hands started trembling. 10 minutes after that, she dropped her fork. At the 1-hour mark, she stood up fast, knocked her chair backward, and stumbled toward the bathroom. Brendan followed her, his face draining of color with every step. I sat there and sipped my orange juice. Here's what you need to understand about the months leading up to that morning. Because this wasn't the first time. This was just the first time I could prove it. It started the way these things always start, small enough that you could talk yourself out of it. A comment about Theo needing more structure because he preferred reading to sports. Brendan laughing when Theo mispronounced a word at dinner, then repeating it louder so the whole table could laugh along. Little things. The kind of things you file away but don't act on because they're family and you keep telling yourself that family doesn't do real damage on purpose. Then came Theo's birthday party. Naomi insisted on handling the cake. I told her Theo's allergen list like I had told her 100 times before. Chocolate cake, no nuts of any kind. Theo is severely allergic to walnuts. We carry an EpiPen everywhere. I have explained what happens if he's exposed in detail that I thought was impossible to misunderstand. Theo took his first bite and his throat started closing. 4 hours in the ER. 1 EpiPen. A lot of fear. Theo was fine. I was not fine. I was furious in a way that had no bottom to it. Brendan called me dramatic. He's okay, Mary. Kids have allergies. These things happen. It doesn't just happen, Brendan. It happens when people don't care. He laughed. Actually laughed. You're being paranoid. And that word, paranoid, I let it land. Because I've been called that before. By my ex-husband when I noticed things he didn't want noticed. By bosses who didn't like that I paid attention. By people who benefited from me doubting myself. I stopped doubting myself a long time ago. Then came the science fair. Theo had been working on his project for weeks. A model of the solar system with working LEDs and a handwritten research paper about gravitational pull. He practiced his presentation in front of the bathroom mirror. He made flashcards. Every night before bed he'd ask me to quiz him, and every night I did, and every night he got a little sharper. He was so proud of that project. Naomi's son Spencer was also competing. Spencer is 11, 2 years older than Theo. And according to Naomi, who reminded everyone at every possible opportunity, Spencer is gifted. The kind of gifted that requires constant announcing. The week before the science fair, Theo started getting sick. Stomach aches. Headaches. Fatigue that wasn't like him. Nothing severe, nothing that sent us to the ER, just enough to slow him down, fog him up, take the shine off him a little. I took him to his pediatrician. Dr. Martin ran a full panel. Everything looks normal, she said. Could be stress from the competition coming up. Theo wasn't stressed. I knew that. Theo was excited. This was a kid who slept fine and ate fine and woke up every morning asking if it was science fair day yet. He wasn't anxious. He was being affected by something I couldn't see. I started keeping a log. Dates, times, what he'd eaten, where we'd been, who he'd been around. I do this in my work, I run a marketing firm, and pattern recognition is essentially the whole job. You collect data. You look for what doesn't fit. You follow the thread. The thread kept leading back to Brendan and Naomi's house. Every time Theo got sick, we'd been there recently. Every time we skipped a visit, he bounced back within a couple of days. I didn't have proof. I had a pattern and I had instinct and I had a mother's certainty that something was very wrong. And then I walked into that brunch and I smelled that mug and I knew. While Brendan was in the bathroom with Naomi, I opened my phone camera, hit record, and set it at an angle on the table that captured the room. I'd already been recording before she started showing serious symptoms. I had audio. I had video. I had their faces. I had the moment when Brendan came back into the dining room, looked at the broken mug on the floor, looked at Naomi crumpled against the wall, and looked at me. And I saw it happen behind his eyes. The math. The realization that the mug she'd been drinking from wasn't hers. That his plan had curved back around and hit exactly the wrong person. His voice cracked. That wasn't what, Brendan? Silence. Theo looked up from his bacon. Is Aunt Naomi okay? I'm not sure, sweetheart, I said, keeping my voice completely steady. But we're going to find out. Naomi slid down the wall. Not gracefully. Not dramatically. Just down. Her breathing was shallow. Her skin had gone pale and clammy. She was mumbling something, and at first I couldn't make out the words, but my phone could. You said it would just make him sick enough to miss the competition. There it was. I dialed 911. Hello. My sister-in-law appears to be having a reaction to something that was intended for my child. The dispatcher paused. Ma'am, can you repeat that? My brother put something in a drink meant for my 9-year-old son. His wife drank it by mistake. We need an ambulance. Another pause. Then, we're sending someone now. I hung up. Brendan was staring at me, his mouth open, his face the color of old concrete. Mary, I never meant for. Don't say a word. Theo tugged my sleeve. Mom, what's happening? I knelt down and held his face in both hands. Aunt Naomi is sick, baby. But she's going to be okay. We're going to make sure of it. He nodded, trusting me the way kids trust their parents when their parents haven't given them a reason not to. And I swore right then that I would do whatever it took to keep earning that trust. From him. Every single day. The ambulance arrived in 7 minutes. 2 paramedics. Efficient, calm, no nonsense. The kind of professionals who have seen everything. The one who took charge was named Skylar. Kind eyes, sharp focus, and she looked at me immediately when she came through the door. Do you know what she ingested? I pointed at Brendan. He does. Skylar turned to him. Sir, I need to know exactly what was in that drink. Brendan stood there with his hands hanging at his sides like he'd forgotten what they were for. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. A substance, he finally said. A synthetic compound. I got it from someone I knew in college. He said it would just cause stomach issues. Nausea, maybe vomiting. Enough to keep a kid home from school for a day or two. Skylar's expression didn't shift. But I watched her jaw tighten. You gave an unregulated synthetic compound to a child. It wasn't supposed to hurt him, Brendan said. His voice was breaking now. Just slow him down. Skylar didn't respond to that. She turned back to Naomi, checked her vitals, radioed the hospital. The second paramedic, a younger guy named Travis, stepped over to Brendan. You're going to need to come with us. Police will want to speak with you. Brendan looked at me one more time. I looked back. No anger on my face. No tears. Just the quiet, clear understanding that this was the moment everything changed, and that I had done exactly what I needed to do, and that he had done exactly what he had chosen to do. Mary, please. You absolutely did, I said. That was all. Theo sat on the couch in the waiting room at Crestwood Medical Center, coloring in a dinosaur book I'd pulled from the car. He was filling in a T-Rex with purple, aggressive purple, the kind of purple that means business, and humming to himself, completely in his own world. I sat next to him and I let myself feel, for just a minute, how close it had been. If I hadn't leaned forward to smell that mug. If I hadn't made the switch. If I had been distracted, or trusting, or less paranoid, that word again, my son would have drunk whatever Brendan put in that cup. And based on what Dr. Stafford told me later, based on the dosage Brendan had planned for Theo's size and age, the outcome would not have been a stomach ache. She used the word catastrophic. She said organ failure was possible. She said death was possible. I sat in that consultation room with a single window looking out at a parking lot, holding the back of a plastic chair, and I let that land. I let myself feel the full weight of it. And then I put it away, because Theo was in the next room coloring a dinosaur purple, and my job was to walk back out there and be his mother. Detective Dominic Walker met me in the hospital cafeteria. Sharp suit, tired eyes, the particular kind of focus that comes from years of dealing with the worst parts of what people do to each other. He sat across from me with a small notebook open and asked me to walk him through everything. I did. Every detail. Every incident. The walnut cake. The pattern I'd been tracking. The log I'd been keeping. The video from that morning. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder I'd been building for months without fully knowing why I was building it. Photos of Theo's allergy documentation. Screenshots of texts. Dates and times and notes. And the video, which Walker watched twice, his pen completely still, his jaw tight. This is premeditated, he said. I know. And you have this backed up? Cloud storage. 3 separate accounts. He almost smiled at that. Almost. We'll need to search your brother's home. Do it. They got the warrant in 2 hours. What they found in Brendan's home office was the kind of thing that makes you understand, for the first time, exactly who someone really is. A locked desk drawer. Inside, small pharmaceutical bottles with no labels. Handwritten dosage notes in Brendan's handwriting. And a spreadsheet, an actual spreadsheet, titled Tolerance Timeline. Let me say that again. My brother made a spreadsheet. For poisoning a child. Because even when you're doing something monstrous, apparently some people need their data organized. The text messages were worse. He'd been in contact with someone named Kyle Miller, a former chemistry student from his college days who dropped out and started selling unregulated compounds online. The messages went back weeks. Brendan, need something to make a kid sick. Not permanent. Just enough to miss school for a few days. Miller, how old? Brendan gave Theo's age and weight. Miller, I've got something. Start small. Build tolerance over time so it's not obvious. Brendan, perfect. And then they went back and forth, dosage adjustments, questions about symptoms, checking the timeline against the science fair date. Planning it the way you'd plan anything. Casually. Carefully. Like it was just a problem that needed a solution. The day before the science fair. Brendan, final dose tomorrow. Make sure he drinks it. Miller, good luck, man. I sat in the police station and read those transcripts and felt something settle inside me. Not anger, I was past anger by then. Just clarity. The kind that comes when something you suspected turns out to be exactly as bad as you thought, maybe worse, and you realize that your instincts were right every time and you should never, ever have doubted them. He made a spreadsheet, I said, mostly to myself. Walker looked up. Excuse me? He made a spreadsheet for poisoning a child. I set the papers down. What was he actually trying to get out of this? What was so important? Walker was quiet for a moment. Then, your sister-in-law wanted Spencer to win that science fair. Your brother wanted her approval. People rationalize a lot when they want something badly enough. I thought about that. He poisoned my son for approval. People have done worse for less. And the terrible thing is, he wasn't wrong. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The prosecutor was a woman named Paige Harrington, and she was exactly the kind of person you want standing between your child and the people who tried to hurt him. She was in her 40s, she had the energy of someone who'd been building to this moment their whole career, and she dismantled Brendan and Naomi with the kind of efficiency that felt almost surgical. Naomi tried crying. She wore soft colors. She dabbed at her eyes. She played the victim, the wife who didn't know what her husband was doing, the woman who was also harmed, the person who suffered too. She leaned into it hard. The jury wasn't moved. Brendan tried claiming ignorance. He said he didn't fully understand what the compound could do. He said Kyle told him it was harmless. He said he never intended real harm. The toxicology report said otherwise. The dosage notes in his own handwriting said otherwise. The spreadsheet titled Tolerance Timeline said otherwise. Expert witnesses took the stand one after another, toxicologists, pediatricians, chemists, and each one explained in clear, plain terms what the compound was, what it did, and what would have happened to a 9-year-old boy who drank the amount Brendan had planned to give him. Theo sat in the courtroom once. I made that decision carefully. I didn't do it to traumatize him. I did it because I wanted 12 people to see him, not as a case number, not as a victim in a file, but as a real kid. A kid in a dinosaur shirt who liked science and asked too many questions and fell asleep every night trusting that the world was safe because his mom made it safe. He held my hand the whole time. "Mom, Uncle Brendan looks sad," he whispered. "He should be, baby. Is he going to jail?" "Yes. He made a very bad choice." Theo nodded slowly. "Like when I hit Nate at school and had to sit out recess?" "Like that," I said. "Except much, much bigger." He accepted that with the matter-of-fact logic that kids have when you just tell them the truth. I've learned that kids can handle a lot more honesty than adults give them credit for. What they can't handle is confusion. Give them the truth in a size they can hold, and they'll be okay. The verdict came on a Friday afternoon. Guilty. All counts. Attempted murder. Conspiracy. Child endangerment. Naomi fainted. This time, nobody rushed to help. This time, nobody switched anything. After the verdict, everything that Brendan had built came apart quickly. His job went first. Terminated within a week of his arrest. Then the house, foreclosure. Then the marriage. Naomi filed for divorce from her hospital bed, citing irreconcilable differences, which is one way to describe your husband trying to poison a child and accidentally getting you instead. Her marketing agency collapsed when the story hit the news. Clients don't tend to stick around when attempted child murder is attached to your business partner's name. Brendan was sentenced. He went to prison. And I filed a restraining order, enrolled Theo in therapy, not because he was in crisis, but because I wanted him to have a space that was just his, where he could process what happened in his own time and his own way, and then I went back to work. Because that's what you do. You handle it. You protect your kid. And then you keep going. 3 months later, I got a call from Redmont Financial, my biggest client. "We're doubling your contract," the CFO said. "And we'd like you to lead the national campaign. You've shown remarkable integrity through all of this." Integrity. I sat with that word for a second. "Thank you," I said. "I'll take it." A few weeks after that, I was invited to speak at the Midwest Entrepreneur Forum. The topic was resilience in competitive markets. 300 people in the room, business owners, marketers, founders. I stood at that podium and I told them the truth, the actual truth. "Sometimes," I said, "your biggest competitor shares your last name." The room laughed, cautious, curious. "And sometimes," I continued, "the most important decision you will ever make is trusting your instincts. Even when everyone around you calls you paranoid. Even when you start to wonder if they're right." I paused. "Never let anyone hand your child a special drink." The room went quiet. Then they stood up. I didn't expect that. I stood there and let it happen and thought about Theo at home with his babysitter, probably watching a dinosaur documentary and eating goldfish crackers, completely fine, completely safe, completely himself. That was the moment I actually felt it. Not victory. Not relief exactly. Just done. The hard part was done. That evening I came home and made coffee. Fresh beans from the farmer's market. My kitchen. My grinder. My mug, plain white ceramic, nothing special about it. Theo came in from soccer practice with his backpack hanging off one shoulder and grass stains on both knees, which I noticed and chose not to address immediately. He looked at my mug. Looked at me. "Is it safe?" I smiled. "Only if I made it." He grinned and grabbed a juice box from the fridge, and we sat down at the kitchen table with the late afternoon light coming in through the window, and we just sat there. Him with his juice box, me with my coffee. He told me about the scrimmage and the A he got on his English essay. I told him I was proud of him. We didn't talk about Brendan. We didn't talk about the trial or the verdict or any of it. We just sat there. Safe, warm, quiet. I've thought about that a lot since, what the whole point of all of it was. The switching of the mugs, the recording, the logs, the evidence, the testimony, all of it. And the answer I keep coming back to is simple. It was all for that table. That late afternoon light. That juice box and that coffee and that kid who got an A on his English essay and wanted to tell me about it. That's what I was protecting. Not a win. Not justice, although I'll take it. Just this. Ordinary and quiet and mine. The best revenge isn't dramatic. It isn't a courtroom moment or a standing ovation or a double contract, though those things happened. The best revenge is peace. It's your child safe at the table. It's knowing that the people who tried to take that from you are exactly where their own choices put them. And it's coffee you made yourself, in your own kitchen, that you can drink without thinking twice. Thanks for listening, and if this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about the lengths a mother will go to protect her child. Trust your instincts. The people who call you paranoid are usually the ones who need you to stop paying attention.